Hello, everyone. My name is Hamid Azimi, and I am part of the TechnologyCatalogue.com team, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I'm joined today with Matthias Hartung from Target Energy Solutions, as well as Vladimir Ingerman and Nick Tillmann from AMROS Corporation. We are today. We are also joined by David Masson, who is our expert in this field, and he will be hosting the Q&A session of this webinar. Before I get into the presentation itself, I'd like to raise 2 points. Number one is where you guys can find these technologies on TechnologyCatalogue.com. You could just go to the TechnologyCatalogue.com website and go to the subsurface and wells module, and then from there you could go to this reservoir modeling submodule, and you can see MEERA simulations and ShaleVision as indicated by stars here, and these are the technologies we'll be talking about today. The second point that I wanted to raise out is regarding asking questions. There is a chat box on the right-hand side of the screen, so I encourage our audience to ask their questions during the presentation. However, we won't pick them up until after the presentation is done, and Dave will take the questions during the Q&A session. Having said that, without any further ado, I will hand it over to Matthias to tell us more about himself and his technologies. Matthias, to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Hamid, and welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here today with you and basically present a technology that has always solved a problem that has always puzzled me, and that is, as petroleum engineers, we work a long time, as well as geologists, to build models of the reservoir and to understand production history, production performance, to make forecasts in terms of how much more reserves, how much more production we can get. And the reservoir modeling itself can take months to years to build, and the predictability of those models subsequently is limited to some extent. In many cases, the models are already out of date 6 to 12 months after they've been built. So I want to propose to you a solution today, and I would like to ask Hamid to give us an introductory video, please.
MEERA Simulation, powering your operational excellence. Powering your development planning. As an E&P asset operator, your organization may have invested significant money, time and talent in acquiring critical data to help you understand your asset by building integrated subsurface models, and finally delivering an optimum history-matched dynamic reservoir model. This allowed you to come up with a trusted plan for your mid-term, long-term field development strategies. You use these models to guide and support your development decisions. Operation planning. Now, managing operational and financial performance of your E&P asset will heavily depend on having a reliable and auditable up-to-date reservoir production prediction. But your current tools hinder you from keeping your optimum but now dormant dynamic reservoir model updated. As a result, your reservoir engineers resource to simplified analytical models, such as decline curve analysis, conduit models, or material balance for short and medium-term production prediction and planning. This leads to major discrepancies between your initially optimum dynamic reservoir model, which represents your initial understanding of the reservoir, with its expected performance behavior, and your field's ongoing observed behavior. What if you had a tool that would allow you to continuously incorporate your streaming production data into your dormant dynamic reservoir model that you had built during your development planning phase to produce your evergreen dynamic model, resulting in alignment between development and operation plans and providing stable and auditable cash flow prediction to the shareholders? Introducing MEERA Simulation, the first AI physics augmented reservoir simulator in the oil and gas industry. So how does it work? Your optimum dynamic reservoir model is coupled into MEERA AI framework. This is done by reassembling the components of your original model so it meshes into the machine learning framework that tightly incorporates the new production data, leading to a superfast, self-updating optimum and live dynamic reservoir model. Now your engineers can use the evergreen optimum dynamic reservoir model as a superfast and reliable production forecasting tool for operation planning and budgeting. Now you've disrupted your conventional simulation through integrating AI into it. Let's show you the additional valuable gains you can harvest. Now you have no time constraints. You can optimize your development strategy by running numerous scenarios in minutes, leveraging the core expertise of your valued and experienced petroleum engineers. Using MEERA Simulation, you can apply deep learning methods to intelligently focus on the critical reservoir properties that lead to tremendous time saving in the static model update lifecycle. Generate up-to-date remaining hydrocarbon maps interactively to continuously optimize your infill drilling locations between FDP cycles.
Yeah, so thank you. That was a brief introduction that is also available on our website, of course. What I want to say basically is that this opportunity, that solution, has many facets and many positive aspects. It gives particularly back time to reservoir engineers to do more scenario testing of what if and how to best develop a field, a brownfield, and to further predict production. All in the aim to optimize the subsurface assets in its economic recovery. But it also means that engineers in their expertise will continue to be needed for the future upsides. And they have now the time to use their skills rather than having to deal with number crunching of the activities that most engineers do most of the time. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that we continue to use the conventional approach of reservoir engineering, building static and dynamic models to history match and forecast. So the workflow itself is not much disturbed from what it was. The benefit is now that we use also the production data in the future, in the past, and can always update with new data coming in. So the massive amounts of lots of production data from the various wells can be used to update the model and the forecast, and therefore make sure it is evergreen. And we use modern deep learning methods and analytics, basically deep learning methods, to use the compute power and the digital transformation aspects that are nowadays available. Let me show you just a couple of slides here to illustrate. So I think all of those slides I'm showing here have been shown also in the slide in the video, but this one is probably one where it sums up the whole methodology. One starts with building the dynamic model as we used to, and you can use we can upload any of the industry tools, be it Eclipse or Petrel, be it CMG, be it T-Navigator, Integraph, or whatever you have. You can use that and upload that. The second piece is you do the data noising and preparation. That's particularly important for the neural network approach. That is comes with all the utilities to do that. You choose the most affecting parameters. We have developed tools that can very quickly highlight you which of the parameters are actually driving the quality of your forecast and which ones are not. Then, of course, the typical of neural networks is to train history. You do a blind test in forecasting mode, and then you do the evergreen forecasting. And in the evergreen forecasting, you're not only matching against wells and against the field level, but you also get remaining hydrocarbon maps that help you with production forecasts and remaining reserves, and thereby are an interactive tool to further develop your field, to do scenario testing. What if I drill another well here? What if I drill 3 horizontal wells? What if I drill more water injectors? What if I change my scheme to an enhanced oil recovery scheme, etc.? So that's the methodology, and the core engine behind it is this picture, which basically says in the middle you have a coarse grid simulator and you have a neural network engine, and both are exchanging data for each time step, irrespective of whether it's in history match mode or in forecast mode. Of course, the coarse grid simulator gets fed with data, and the neural network also gets fed with data, and thereby they exchange critical information. The neural network exchanges the predicted production rates into the simulator, and the simulator exchanges data with pressure and saturation maps that come out of the history of the simulator in that time step. And this is, as I said, both for history match mode, but also in forecast mode. We go on further. So we have done a lot of field trials. There's a lot of benefits, and there's a study. One of the field studies that I want to show is you see the history match of 3 wells here, one in production history match mode only, one in history match and prediction mode. The prediction mode starts about 2009, and then one only in prediction mode. So here, our MEERA approach in blue is matching the production data observed as gray dots much better than the former Eclipse model. And that was quite surprising, because this Eclipse model was still run in history match mode, whereas our simulation, MEERA simulation, was done completely in forecast mode. In other words, MEERA simulation had not seen the data before. It was predicting what happens to a well that would be drilled at this location with that completion concept. And I think this is where I would like to leave it. The solution comes with 3, basically, it comes either as on a license basis, or it comes as a service. And in a service, or if you try to do it in license yourself, you will always start with a fast parameter screening to see what are the most affecting parameters for the forecast. You will do the forecasting, and you will get the remaining oil maps or gas maps in order for you to build your future field development scenarios. I should say that in all cases that we've done, our solutions were as good as or better, meaning there might have been some wells which arguably the history match model by Eclipse was better, but never far out was ours. But in many cases, ours was better or as good to the conventional approach. So you save a lot of time for as good or better results, and therefore you free up costs and critical resources to do better further development of your assets. All of our clients that have used this tool have said they find the results are shown by the drill bit be superior to their former approaches. And with that, I would like to open up for questions.
So many thanks, Matthias. This is David Masson here. Introduced as an independent consultant. In my past, I was the Group Chief Reservoir Engineer for Shell, which gives me, I hope, some of the insights into the specific issues arising that Matthias has hinted at. So I'd like to pass the floor to you guys out there. I understand there are roughly 40 of you in the audience. And if you could enter your questions right now, that would be great. And Matthias will then answer them. Now, I do have one preloaded. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to actually supply a question. Otherwise, you're going to have to answer my first question, Matthias. So on countdown. In fact, I'll just put mine up there. And I'll read it out to you. And the question is, Matthias, can you describe some of the factors which might limit the robustness of a MEERA simulation in prediction mode?
So very good. So the robustness in prediction mode is very much dependent, of course, on the data that you have available. So I would say we have seen an example where the the problem was sparse, loaded by sparse data and of poor quality. So any prediction was struggling with, and of course ours was as well. But it was yielding better results than the conventional approach only on the dynamic simulation. But of course, it is not a miracle, this tool. It will be driven on the quality and the completeness of data, and the more data it has, the better it will be.
Okay, thanks, Matthias, for answering that one. And another David actually on the line here on the chat box, and he asks, what does MEERA do differently than MEPO or CMOST or Enable or other similar products? And those products are let's see, applications have been around for a while, Matthias, which are used in kind of semi-automatic history match mode for conventional simulators. So if you could answer that one, please.
Yeah. So yeah, automatic history match mode is of course a conventional technique. This one combines the dynamic simulation of industry standard tools with the master models production data coming directly from the wells, and it's basically interacting between both. This tool is therefore a hybrid solution between the two. We also see in the industry a lot of AI-based tools that are basically looking at time series to get a forecast, and they do a very good match. They do a very good match at a well-by-well basis, but their predictability in terms of what can I now do with the remaining oil maps, first of all, they don't have them, and the predictability of automatic history match solutions in that regard is very poor in terms of identifying future locations, remaining oil maps, and securing further reserves.
Okay, thanks, Matthias. Next, a question from Peter. Peter asks whether the uncertainty ranges in the forecasts, whether they can be calculated or displayed easily.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because a lot of discussions we have with our clients as well is all around how can we now cover uncertainty. There is a separate presentation on that that highlights the uncertainty management conventional approaches, the various aspects we can do in ensemble approaches, and then also what we can do with MEERA simulation in that. In terms of identifying and assessing uncertainties, we have scripting capability to use assemble models, so we can use in hundreds of different models, basically, that span the space of uncertainty as identified by engineers and geoscientists, and then going through them, analyze what is the impact on the predictability of the outcome. In other words, what's the quality of the outcome given the uncertainty? And that is another dimension of looking at uncertainty. Now, of course, that's a more complex undertaking than just taking one model through, but we have the capability to address the uncertainty identified in different scenarios or different statistical approaches and see the outcome of the history match as well as forecast models as a result. And we have been surprised that in many cases, uncertainty in certain parameters that were deemed very critical have proven to be irrelevant.
Very good. I do have two more questions, and let's have a go at answering both of these, Matthias, so you have to keep the answers fairly short. The first one from Chooks. He says, hi, Dave, and I have a feeling I might know Chooks. I've known several in the past. The tool looks promising, but it appears the whole presentation was rushed about 10 minutes. And for Chooks, Matthias, it's not exactly clear the additional value that MEERA is bringing. And I did have the advantage of being able to read through the slides beforehand. And I don't think you mentioned explicitly the time associated with each of these predictions and history matches, the time required.
You're absolutely right. I mentioned the time that is saved for reservoir engineers. And I've worked for Shell a long time. There's quite a number of reservoir engineers doing nothing but production forecast of complex fields almost the entire year round, because every quarter they have to predict, and then they go back to material balance or other simple tools to get the magic done. That is the time saving. But also
or perhaps the simulation time is maybe what I meant.
So also the simulation time. So the model that I've showed here is an example The history match model runs on Eclipse on a workstation 7 to 8 hours, whereas MEERA runs in 12 minutes the first time, and every forecast revival step takes milliseconds, so less than a second. In other words, you can afford to run as many scenarios as you like. Compute power and time waiting on simulation results is not an issue.
Thank you, Matthias. I think that probably stimulated some interest for Chooks. And Thomas asks if you can talk a little bit about market penetration. So this is more, your business model, etc.
Yeah, sure. So we have a few clients. We have done various studies, of course. It usually takes, so we have quite a number of them in the Middle East. We also have the North Sea cases, complex Triassic fields. We have water floods. We have EOR. We have siliclastics and carbonate fields in this. Usually more brown fields, so where there is a lot of data, but also cases where we have poor data coverage. I mentioned that. So that's the market. We're still in the beginning, and where we go, usually we find quite some interest. And we find that we can usually turn around fields, for instance, a Nigerian field, many wells with like 50 to 80 wells, this sort of thing, within 2 weeks. That means we get the data from the client and we return back as a service within 2 weeks the whole story, and set it up. And thereafter it takes, as I said, a few seconds to, takes the time to upload the new data to run another forecast, and there's no time limit there, basically. So market penetration is still the beginning. We have done various client trials, and of course, we're happy to do more.
Very good, Matthias. Thank you very much. And thanks, folks who have asked the questions. David did come back asking a further question. May I just make the comment that, it's always possible to access Target, Matthias, or any of his colleagues via Deployment Matters, via the platform, or direct contact. So I'd ask you to do that if you have any residual questions that you have for Matthias. And with that, Matthias, thanks again. And I will now pass over to the next presentation, which is from Vladimir Ingerman. He is the founder and CEO of the AMROS Corporation. And together with Nick Tillmann, who is his partner, also of AMROS, they are going to provide their presentation of their technology, which goes by the trade name of ShaleVision. So Hamid, if you could make sure that Nick and Vladimir are given the opportunity to give their presentation, that would be great.
Nick, would you mind just coming online so we can start? I suggest I play the video first, and then we can kick a start. Okay, great.
Shale plays operators' attention. Today, there is only one company in the world capable of identifying the locations of movable hydrocarbons in shale oil deposits. This is AMROS Corporation. AMROS uses a standard open-hole log data to calculate a production profile that shows where the recoverable oil is located. It shows operators where to frack vertical wells and where to drill horizontal wells. It eliminates unnecessary fracking to reduce development costs while increasing total production at the same time.
Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'm very happy to present AMROS Corporation. Basically, we're a service company, and I think the video explained pretty well what we do. Our motto is frack less, produce more, and that's because it's all about the sweet spots. In evaluating wells in the Permian Basin, we noticed that pretty much for every good high-producing well that's drilled, operators are drilling four poor wells, 4 wells that don't produce very well. And the reason for that is because it's very difficult in shale plays, because of their heterogeneous nature, to identify sweet spots. And as a result of that, operators are really focusing on drilling efficiency to reduce costs. So they're using geometric drilling, factory drilling, zipper fracking, where you're fracking multiple wells at the same time to keep costs down. But as we've seen, that doesn't always result in highest producing wells. So what AMROS ShaleVision does is it identifies sweet spots based on open hole log data. So if an operator can target sweet spots, eliminate drilling those 4 bad wells for every well, they can actually significantly reduce their unit production costs by a factor of 3, and that will actually allow them to become profitable with $20 oil. So what's so special about ShaleVision is essentially that we're using standard open hole log data, but we're looking at it in a different way from everybody else. Vladimir Ingerman, who will be available for questions, the founder of AMROS. Before emigrating to the United States in the 90s, he was a leading scientist in the former Soviet Union. And because of his position, he was able to do a number of hydrodynamic or pressure buildup well tests and focus on really correlating data from log data with permeability and real production. And the algorithms that form ShaleVision technology were developed during his time and applied in wells in not only Russia, but really all over the world, and most recently in the Permian Basin. So kind of here's how it works. If an operator provides us with standard open hole log data, within 24 hours, we can provide a production profile which shows predicted production per 100 feet, along with recommended frac stages and identification of the best formations. When we combine that with log data from surrounding wells, we can provide a production map for the best formations, the best locations, which actually predict production throughout the area, along with recommended trajectories for horizontal wells. So again, we're identifying the sweet spots. And the data that provides is not only useful for solving one of the biggest problem operators have, and that is they're drilling a lot of low producing wells, but also helps them with field development to minimize frac hits. And I think those of you who might be familiar with that know that there's a lot of infill drilling going on, and all too often a new well that's drilled actually takes production from existing wells. Big problem in the basin. So ShaleVision is really a new way to look at log data. So it's not doesn't have anything to do with big data or a downhole tool. It's basically log data that we can analyze without actually even going onto the well site. So anyway, here's what a production profile looks like. This is a 1,000-foot segment of a production profile, which shows a production per 100 feet. So the farther to the right the line goes, the more that well is going to produce. And as you can see from this well, if you were to frack this segment, most of the fracking stages would produce nothing. Here's a smaller segment, a 100-foot segment of the production profile. Again, you can see the brown line, and that indicates an area where it's possible to drill high producing horizontal wells. So along with log data from surrounding wells, we've identified an area for a very high producing horizontal well that'll produce 850 barrels a day. And here's an example again of how we can use the log data from vertical wells to identify a location for a horizontal well. You can see these green areas here are vertical wells, and based on the log data and predicted production from those wells, we were able to identify a location for a horizontal well, a high-producing horizontal well. This is an example of a production map for a high-producing zone. Again, this is Wolfcamp A, the zone that was identified in the production profile you just saw. It's color-coded to show which areas are the highest producing. In this case, the darker colors show higher production potential. The production map can be used to identify sweet spots for horizontal wells and also to optimize well placement. And here's a case study. This is an example where the technology was used, Escapeda Oil and Gas. Had planned to drill a well in an underexplored area in West Texas, working with numerous service companies. They identified a location for a horizontal well that they were going to drill, and they came to AMROS to actually look at the same data. AMROS well, first of all, AMROS calculated that the well that Escapeda had planned to drill would have produced 200 barrels per day. And at the same time, we identified locations, at the same location, we identified the opportunity to drill 4 horizontal wells that would have produced 580 barrels per day each. So again, the AMROS plan would have resulted in cash flow for the first year of $20 million versus a loss of $1.3 million if they had drilled the single well that they had identified with the service company. So by looking at the same data that the service companies were looking at, AMROS was able to identify sweet spots that would have significantly improved the profitability of that field. So quickly to summarize, AMROS ShaleVision can change the paradigm of shale development by increasing production and reducing development costs. Also by accessing reserves missed by conventional development. One application for the technology would be to go take a look at areas that were previously developed where you have log data available to look at opportunities that were overlooked, opportunities for high producing horizontal wells. So that was kind of a quick overview, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And now I'd like to invite Vladimir Ingerman to join us, and we're very happy to take your questions.
Many thanks, Nick, and welcome, Vladimir, to the conversation. So same procedure really for everyone in the audience. If you could input your questions to the chat box, that would be greatly appreciated. And I do have one on standby. I'll give you 10 seconds again just to get your questions loaded up. So looks like we're still got our audience busy typing, guys. So I'm going to give you a question. And this one from me is if you could, just for my interest, describe the derivation of this production profile in your log. It seems to be core to the, to exactly what the application does. And I say here, is it calculated using rock properties from logs, or is it pattern recognition of log shapes, or is it a bit of both? That's the question. And you're not obliged to give away proprietary information, of course, but just give a bit of a feel.
Okay, let me answer. This for calculation production profile, you write this is a key of the technology. It shows production different part of the well. And to calculate it, we need just standard open hole log data. It's included gamma ray, resistivity tool, neutron and density porosity. We use proprietary equation that was developed because we had access to permeability that was obtained from well testing. This is a unique set of data where we have around 400 wells with permeability that calculated from testing these wells. At the same time, we had all information about evaporation intervals, log data. As a result, we capable to do this job with production profile.
Great, Vladimir, thank you very much. Looks as though still no questions actually from the floor. And unfortunately, I can't see the names of everyone, so I can't name and shame them for not responding. But I do have one more question, and it really again comes from the fact that I was able to see the full presentation. And you mentioned earlier that or you mentioned in the slides that you compare with other industry industry offerings. And my question really is ShaleVision's production profile comparable with Schlumberger's producibility index? And has there ever been a comparison in the same well?
Yes, actually, as was Nick said during presentation, they are only company that can produce this production profile. If you look on the publication, including Schlumberger, many companies can generate some kind of index that compare formations and make flag for the best formations. They're talking about shale plays. At the same time, to generate this flag, they need much more data than AMROS. As I said, we need just standard open hole log data. Most of these companies request much more exotic data, sonic data, nuclear magnetic resonance, acoustic, electric, and it was most critical. Most of them, including Schlumberger, they request core or cutting analysis that takes weeks or months, and the results actually good for research, but not good for operations. And none of this company can produce production profile. They generate pay flag that we always generate for conventional reservoir, and they have a lot of sense for conventional reservoir. But for shale, it doesn't make much sense because it's source rock, and everybody knows that hydrocarbons is there.
Okay, thanks, Vladimir. It's got a little bit of resonance with the previous presentation, where indeed one of the benefits of the technology is ability to respond in a very short time frame. I do not yet see any questions, so I'm going to give you one more.
Dave, there is a question actually from Chuck's. I don't know if you see it or not. It's
thank you.
Yeah.
I've got it. Chuck's, thanks for the question, and so you're spared one more of my questions, Vladimir. This one is from Chuck's, and the point is, he says, since it relies solely on original log data, how does ShaleVision deal with remaining hydrocarbons after production has commenced?
Actually, if you have, you don't have information to make any conclusion about remaining reserves. We can make conclusion about original reserves because the source shows original information before development.
Okay. Very good. I think because we had a bit of a slow start, I'll do one more question. And this is one, again, I'm asking the question, Vladimir, I hope you don't mind. I think it's one that folks would be keen to understand a little bit in terms of your company. And the question is, can you describe your business model for example, are you happy to give trials of your technology?
No, of course, it's nature of our business that the field is different, people is different, and everybody. If there's any new technology, people said, "Oh, it works for my neighbors, but I'm not sure that it will work for my field or for my part of the field." So the normal what we're doing is some kind of trial demo project, and this demo project operators provide information about open hole log data for vertical wells. It's very critical that we need vertical wells. And we make analyze this data and generate results the same as it was Nick told during presentation.
Okay.
Normally, after operators see result, then go to much bigger project.
Right.
But demo project is very normal and it's very logical to start.
Okay, well, Vladimir, thank you very much, and Nick also for the earlier presentation. I think Hamid, we're out of questions from the floor, so I'll pass back to you. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Vladimir. Before we basically round off today's webinar, I'd like to raise two additional items as well. One is, if you have any questions, please get in touch with us at info@technologycatalogue.com, or you can actually ask the folks directly through the technologycatalogue.com technology pages that they have. You can contact them there directly. So if you have any questions, please do follow the two methods that I just mentioned. The second point that I wanted to raise is that we're going to have more webinars coming up this month, so please join us in our upcoming webinars next week. We're going to have one every week. There's going to be one. And also I noticed one of the audiences wanted to be in touch with one of our presenters. I'll make that happen, but by all means, also, if you have any questions, please just drop us an email at info@technologycatalogue.com. Having said that, I'd like to thank both. I would like to ask Vladimir and Nick to come online as well. So thank them as well. Thank you, Dave, for hosting the Q&A session, and thanks, Matthias, for giving the MEERA simulation presentation. Vladimir, thank you as well. And Nick, thanks. And also would like to thank our audience for joining us today. Have a good rest of the day, folks, and stay safe.